So, hello. Hey, everybody, it's your girl, Miss Mouthy, and I'm super excited about this um, episode of Miss Mouthy because it is imperative to one, archive our history, but also highlight community members and leaders of our own community. And I have no other than the Black Trans Fund with me today. And I just thought it would be imperative to with Transgender Day of Remembrance to highlight Black joy and liberation. And they are pivotal to the work that they're doing with centering Black joy and liberation. So, if Bree, you could introduce yourself. We'll go around and we'll do names, pronouns, where you're from, and um, how are you affiliated, or how did you become part of BTS?
Brie Rivera, she, her. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I have the hiccups, which is why I'm pausing.
Okay.
Yeah, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I am the lead program officer of the Black Trans Fund. All of my technology wants to talk to me right now. But yeah, Black Trans Fund, Joy and Liberation is what we do. Happy to have an opportunity to share more about Black Trans Fund and disrupt the space on Transgender Day of Remembrance. You know, I think, yeah, we're always spending so much time talking about trauma and despair when actually Black trans folks are experiencing lots of joy. And then check. I would like to pass it to my right-hand person, Hunter Day, who keeps me together and make sure that I breathe and drink water and experience joy on a daily basis.
And grease your scalp. Don't forget that part.
Yes.
My name is Hunter Day, or HD. Pronouns are they and them. I am from Brooklyn, New York, but I'm currently COVID displaced in New Jersey. And I am the program assistant that supports the Black Trans Fund. So I am the person who helps to do the admin, move the money, follow up with folks, and make sure that we continue to show out. And I am glad to be here. I sort of come into the space of BTF by way of Bree because she looked at me and was like, "Do you want to do this work?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not sure." And she's like, "What do you mean?" Because as someone who identifies as being gender expansive or non-binary, it can feel a little bit confusing to figure out how to show up in the space. But she was really clear that BTF also was for me as well. I knew, but didn't know how to ask. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful also for the space because I feel like it is important to talk about the ways that we do glisten in our joy as trans folks. And there are kids that are yelling behind me. I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine. Okay. What they say, it takes a village, right?
Right. It does. But then I'm just really, I feel like it's really important that it makes space for us to talk about the ways that we are living. Something that I think a lot about is when we talk about folks that have passed on and transitioned, that we've lost, that we don't always center the parts that we remember as being continuing, right? That they were before and they are after. And so on this moment, I want to also lift up the continuing essence of our lives.
Yes.
I'll pass it over to Jay Mace.
Well, y'all are hard acts to follow today. I'll just say that real quick. But yeah, so my name is Jay Mace III, Jay Mace, or Mace for short. I use he, him as pronouns. And I'm on the advisory board for the Black Trans Fund. And what I, in addition to what Bree and Hunter Day said about what the Black Trans Fund does, I believe we create possibilities, right? And possibilities for us to thrive, right? Which I think is oftentimes people want to talk about Black trans folks from very paternalistic or often sometimes a very pitying or way, which is not about how do we actually think about the folks that are here, that are trying to do the work and wanting to do the work, and are showing up and making water out of stones, And so I
Yes.
think we help folks in our community to continue to be.
Thank you.
They just joined us.
Oh,
Hey.
hi, Jay.
Oh, what up, y'all? Y'all doing?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm cool. I'm cool. Glad I can make it.
Yay. So we just did some introductions. If you don't mind, tell us about yourself, who you are, pronouns, where you calling from, and what's bringing you joy.
Word, what up? My name is Jay. My pronouns are he and him. I'm currently calling from my hometown of Baton Rouge, but I'm usually in New Orleans, so shout out New Orleans. And lots of things bring me joy. I will say being home right now has been a mixed, like a lot of mixed emotions. And I'm staying right outside my hood, so it's just a lot of like memories, a little bit of nostalgia. Some things are feeling real like foreign. So yeah, just embracing all of that.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for being here today. And last but certainly not least,
I'll try. Hi, my name is Monica Jones. I am from Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm in Tucson right now, and I am of the Black Trans Fund, and I'm really excited about being there. I got this through Bree said, Monica, you a badass bitch. Come be on this team with me, so I'm really excited about it. And
okay,
so
period.
that's what I'm hearing.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. And it's your girl, Miss Mouthy. So a little about myself. I am Raquel Trammell. I created this platform. My podcast is all about the narratives and experiences of trans women of color here in Detroit with the allies that love and support us. One thing I did not like was how media was misrepresenting trans people throughout the nation. And so I just really wanted my podcast to highlight who better else to tell their own story than yourself, right? And so that was just something. And then with research kind of went hand in hand. I'm also a researcher at the University of Michigan. And I think it's really imperative that these numbers and the work that we do kind of shapes how these women are able to tell their stories. So um, in Detroit, seeing so much violence, having these girls do screeners and reports, and often I thought it would be a perfect way with Transgender Day of Remembrance to change oftentimes those narratives, because it's something that happens no different than what I see with slavery. It's like people start glorify the trauma and oppression of other people. And I just think there is so much beauty and joy in life when it comes to trans people living and thriving. So, next, let's play a little icebreaker if y'all all are open to it. Is that like, I like to get to know people's personalities, right? Get to know what they like if they had an option. Oftentimes with social media, we have a lot of them. So I was going to do a Spitfire question round for you all and just kind of see what people personalities and energies is giving. Is that okay with y'all?
We're down. We're down. I'm
Okay.
nervous, but we're down.
Just don't ask me nothing embarrassing.
No, okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop
Okay.
the recording. No.
HD. Do you prefer the pool or the beach?
I feel like the beach. I have a problem with like water staying still. I don't trust like what might be in the
Okay.
pool. But also
Yeah.
I think I enjoy smelling the seawater too. Like I don't really feel like chlorine is given what it needs to be given. So just like the sea, right? I need to be
Okay.
check. Thank you.
No problem. Bree, do you prefer books or films?
Books, because I can't follow, I'm sorry, films, because I can't follow characters in books. I need to put a face to a name. So if you give me a book with 100 characters, I never know what's going on.
Okay. Jay, do you prefer nights in or nights out?
Oh man, that's a hard one. Oh shit, I'm a Cancer, so it depends. Like
Okay, come on, Cancer.
sometimes I'm like, sometimes it's like very in the shell, homebody. But when I do go out at night, it's up there. Like it's lit. Yeah.
Okay. Boom. Okay. Jay Mace, do you like morning or nights?
Nighttime. I don't want to be up in the morning.
Okay. Does that have to do with your zodiac sign or just you as a person?
That, I'm a performer, and so a lot of my work happens late at night, and so I do not want, I try to schedule everything afternoon or later. So I'm gonna be up till 3 in the morning, so I want to be up no later than or no earlier than 11 a.m. if I could help it.
Okay. Monica, do you like summer or winters?
You know, so I like the winter because I'm from Arizona and our summer are really hot here. So I like the winter. So I like making hot chocolate.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank y'all. I guess I'll give myself a question. Do I like to dress um casual or smart? I definitely think I like to dress more smart only because you don't know what type of weather you're gonna get here in Michigan. So one day it could be hot as hell. The next day you can wear a jacket or over anything. You can like. It's good to have layers here in Michigan just so you can be able to pivot if the weather get kind of crazy and chaotic. So thank y'all all for doing that and sharing. One thing I wanted to table the conversation with saying, like, when you hear the word joy, what does that mean when you think of like Black trans joy?
If it's okay, I have a thought just around.
Yes.
To me, I think in the last few years, um, there has been so much that has shifted. I feel like in the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years around organizations for Black trans folks, community spaces for Black trans folks, and so I feel like to me, joy is acknowledging that I feel like we've been in a Black trans renaissance, and
Yes.
that's I think evidence even just by us having this conversation and seeing all the different places that, as I think about all the people on this call and all the different places we've shown up around Black trans community, is just it's kind of wild to think what can happen in a decade.
Um, since we've seen like Black people having access to joy, in what ways, if any, do you think we can preserve that joy? Because I know for me, like, go ahead.
No, you said for you.
Oh yeah, I just know for me that like oftentimes when I get as a Black person, it's important that when I get a little something, I like to hold on to it because I feel like somebody's gonna take it away from me, right? And I just think about like when I have these moments of peace and joy and happiness, I don't know necessarily how to preserve it. So I was wondering if anybody else had any thoughts around
I think one of the strategies that we use is just like, I think funding that type of work. And then also like one of the biggest like cultural shifts that BTF creates is like we collect narratives and then we reframe them for folks to understand why it's important to center joy, liberation, and Black trans communities. A couple of weeks ago, Black Trans Fund got an award from I Am Human Foundation for Organization of the Year.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that their gala just really reminded me of why it's important for Black trans folks to experience joy and what that looks like in action. And so, you know, Black Trans Fund, that was our first award that we've gotten as a fund since we've been in existence, and it came from another Black trans-led organization. So I think there's that. But also, like, we had this gala at a really popular African-American museum in Atlanta. Folks ate plates from Wolfgang Puck's restaurant. And everyone was like gowned, hair, makeup, shoe, like all the things. And it was a good space to, like, one, not only to make sure that, like, you know, we have access to like nice things, good things for our bodies, but also to see like other Black trans leaders being awarded and celebrated in the space. And so, you know, I think it's important to name as a leader that, you know, the last 2 years have been really hard for myself and other Black trans folks. And I think that's one of the ways that we can preserve our joy, is just being able to have so many different access points for us to be able to like receive and like bask in that joy. And it's makes me glad sometimes when I'm experiencing like my lowest of moments to know that like grantees, folks that we've supported on the ground are actually like doing that for folks every day. And I think those are the things that kind of bring me joy.
Thank you so much for sharing.
The question about like how to preserve joy, and I was just simply being like, when I heard you say it, Ms. Mouthy, that I was like also thinking like, how do I preserve it when I know that I'm always worried about it being taken away? So when you said that, I was like thinking automatically about it being stolen. And I feel like I don't necessarily I don't think about preserve. I feel like I hold on to those moments, right? Like I feel like we are in the practice of trying to like, Bree and I are constantly like, you know what, let's just stop for a minute to acknowledge, right? Like, let's just stop for a minute to breathe. Let's take a minute and say that name again, right? Like, or just like how to like really like sort of embolden these moments when we're in them. Or even just being able to like come back to them again. Like if we have a conversation with Jay Mace, like we like come back a week later and say, remember when Jay Mace said this thing? Like it still brings up that moment of positivity. It brings up that moment of joy, like and also just being in the space together, having the space to like see one another, even though we are deeply distant right now. Like we have folks on the call who are in different time zones, but that we are like knowing that like we're all thinking or activated in community together at the same time through time, right? And that's the way that I feel like maybe it's preserved, that we're like, I'm laughing here right now at 6:30 p.m., but also like the laugh is happening also on the West Coast at like, what is it, 3:30, 7 p.m., right?
Yeah.
So that's the preservedness over time, right? That we're doing that in a little bit.
I love that. One thing I would love to give is maybe like the backstory or the history of BTF and how y'all came to do the work that y'all do, and kind of elaborate a little bit about the work that you all do.
Raquel, to your question though, I think you've known me for a long time, and you know, if it didn't bring joy, I was like, I ain't interested.
I'm here for it.
That's for me, it's a coping mechanism. Like I spent so much time being miserable that when I transitioned, I wanted to experience as much joy as possible. And so I've tried to do that in my work in multiple ways. Doesn't always end up being joyful, but I am a firm believer that in the moments where I'm most like lost and beat down, that someone is experiencing joy on my behalf. And so there's that. You know, Black Trans Fund is all of the things. It disrupts philanthropy, shakes up movements, you know, really pumps money and resources to the folks on the ground that are actually like doing innovative work on behalf of not just Black trans folks, but everyone. And so, you know, also very clear that I get to do this work with people that I care about and the people that I love and the people who have like poured into me, held me accountable, corrected me, and allowed me to be the person I am. So like HD helps me every day with all of the things and keeps me together. You know, Jay Mace is our advisor, brilliant, always showing up for BTF and keeping us together. You know, Jay, love being in the space with Jay because I feel like I always leave as a different person. And Jay's wisdom is just something that I need in my life all the time. And I'm very grateful. And you know, Monica Jones, Money Monica. That's my homegirl, you know. Oh bitch, yeah, I'm talking about you, Monica. You know, the last time we were together, it just reminded me of why I appreciate just being in your presence. Like you show up, you show out, and everything you do, you're like, oh, Black trans people got to experience joy. So what we gonna do that's gonna be joyful? And so, you know, I think BTF is where two things reside: the money and the joy. Okay. Come on, yes, HD. But yeah, I get to do this work with folks that I love, and get to pour into community every day. And so yeah, that's what we are. That's what we do. I'm wondering if folks have any other like.
Yeah, it could even be even simpler, right? Like what actually brings you joy internally or externally?
I'm still
You
also.
know,
Oh, sorry, Monica.
you know what brings me joy is like, see this thing right here, right? Where you can get on a phone call and just listen to people and like hear trans people talk, Black trans people talk about stuff and what brings them joy, right? And so this is what brings me joy because like I've been moving so fast for the last couple of months and just having that moment just to listen to people talk, and it's what brings me joy.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm still thinking about this preservation piece, like that, again, that
Okay.
preservation piece. Because also I think that goes along with what Bree was saying about, you know, holding philanthropic organizations and the industry accountable, right? So I think that a lot of what we do, especially when folks see themselves trying to be in solidarity with Black trans folks and other targeted communities, they try to usurp the work, they try to take over the work, they try to center themselves as the saviors versus like actually allowing, getting out of the way of the things that need to get done. And so to me, you know, preserving the work means being honest about our truth. It means being honest about the ways that other institutions attempt to take away resources and power and time and all those things from us. And, you know, just being honest about that because we know how good it can be, right? And especially by building the space together and building up other organizations and building up Black trans community, we know what it's like to come into a space and feel respected and honored and cared for. We want all Black trans folks to feel that. I think that is the joy.
Thank you
Also,
so much.
Black trans prayer book preserves, plugging that because you know you just not out here. You a whole like author, multiple books.
I really love that spiritual piece. You know, if anyone ever wants to do the theology piece and the breakdown of that, you know, I'm always down. In the Black Trans Prayer Book, we're always down for conversations about religious institutions also being accountable for the ways that they cause harm and allowing for Black trans folks to deal with our spiritual trauma and come to some healing.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Okay, so with that, whether it be BTF or just a moment that's personal to you, what is a highlighted moment that you can recall that brought you joy? Because one thing I do love about like those type of moments or like reflecting on them, you get that joy right back. Yeah. You get that feeling right back. You go back to that moment and you was just like, gosh, that was everything, okay?
This might be really corny, so I apologize if it is, but I think
No,
just
you're not
honestly,
corny. Don't apologize.
I'm just saying preemptively,
You.
just in case,
You.
But I think honestly, just being able to be in a room together and be able to make decisions about, again, who we're going to care for and how we're going to do that. I think that's really powerful. I think there's so many different spaces. So as I think so many Black trans folks get pushed out of typical 9-to-5 work, get pushed out of organizations. I don't think that we should have to work for lots of different 9-to-5s or nonprofits, all those things. But we get pushed out of such regular resources that we're not always able to make decisions about our lives. And so to be in a place in which we can sit around a table and say like, hey, these are people we know and have seen or witnessed or that we've heard about in community. My puppy is also joining the chat.
No, it's fine.
And we get to support that. I think that is always joyful, always.
Your dog is talking about their joy, okay? I'll say one moment for me. It's been this year with this platform and being able to, I don't even know. But 7 Days of Luck with Miss Mouthy was really a moment that giving the work that like Bree started with just like allowing the girls to get resources. Hi. Allowing the girls to get resources without overly policing them about a process or what they're going to use it for or having to wait a long period of time. That was really meaningful for me. And I felt like I had to be under some organization or I had to kiss somebody's ass to get the money. But the money literally fell in my lap. And from there, I knew that there was a greater need for women to be blessed and like receive, right? And so that moment was imperative for me with joy. What are some other moments people recall where they felt joy?
I'm gonna jump in and just say that there was a moment, well, there's been a few moments I want to say where I have similarly been on a call with Bree, and the very like solid but smooth ass way that she will let someone know in a conversation, but like not like she doesn't show off this anger about it, but she'll check people about how they are interacting with her. And so I can like go back to a moment like from last year where she said like, you know what, I'm not being honored in this moment right now. And like just to hear like we're in a room with all of the like big wigs doing all the work that has to like move this money, and she just was like paused it, right? And so for me, it was in that moment seeing a Black woman, Black trans woman, assert an understanding of pause for their presence, right? That gave me so much joy. Like that was one moment that I can say. I'm a big fan of Breeze because
Me too.
the way that she leads is it's fierce. It's not harsh. It is like full of abundant love, right? And there's just like so much wisdom in it, but it's not this like really like, it's not petty, it's not shady, it's very, very sweet, right? And so it's like there, yes, a little bit petty, right? But not intentionally, right? But like I also like there was a moment also where she's on the call with a bunch of like cis folks talking about the importance of this work. And she made them understand like the history of racism, how it affects gender, and how much of what we see is because of like whiteness invading the way that we navigate being here, right? And like she literally took them through a history lesson, right? And then busted them down with an awareness of like how a lot of our like femme folks in the community have made a lot of what we understand as like a standard of beauty too, right? That we like have done a lot of work around that, but also just like she made it clear that like if we're going to be funding this work, it's not about genital justice, but about actual gender justice. And I fucking like I turned inside out because I was just like that, like, and everyone was like just like going on with the conversation, but she carried the fuck out of them, and that gave me so much joy.
Oh, that's why we love you, Bree. Just know, I met you, and I know I will want you back in Detroit, but you doing your thing. But yes, anybody else have any other moments of joy that they would like to share?
I feel like for me, it's not necessarily a particular moment that I'm thinking of. I mean, obviously there's been actual moments, but what's coming up for me is just, I think, spaces where I've been invited to be both Black and trans. And I feel like that has been a big part of BTF for me. Is, there's usually if I'm in a room talking about funding for trans people or getting trans people resources, it's a lot of white people. Or if I'm, I've been in conversations where, we try to have, or I would say I've been in conversations where we're trying to talk about getting resources to trans people, but the room isn't Black. And so even when we talk about those resources, like it's through a very white, like trans experience, like lens, right? And so I think in general, in spaces where I'm invited to both bring like, not only is Jay a masculine person or a man of trans experience, but Jay's also a Black man. Jay's also a Black man from the South. Jay's also a Black man from the hood. Like Jay also is still hustling. It's still, like, so all of these different things that I feel like when I'm actually invited to a space where it's like, bring that. And also we understand that you have this expertise in your experience around gender. That's not just a very like monolithic idea of like, we're either inviting you here because you have trans experience or because you have this Black experience. I think especially as an organizer, when I think about movement, when I think about like long-term change, a lot of it for me is being able to go into a space and not feel like I have to choose like who I'm advocating for or like what identity I need to like prioritize in this moment, but instead, like, how can I bring my full self into this space? And even thinking about what Bree was saying earlier, in a lot of spaces that we've been in, luckily have been those spaces that invite both of those, or spaces that I push and I'm like, actually, it's great that we're all trans, and also we have to have some analysis around other justice, right? Like we also are responsible as Black trans people to also have some analysis around disability justice. We also have some, and we also have to make space for the fact that there are Black trans people who are not born in the U.S. or don't, and there's all of those things also impact their experiences around gender and around Blackness. And so I think just like being able to bring all of that into a space, or to be able to expect that, that'll be there. I feel like that is something that I've appreciated about BTF, is even if we're not all coming with the same thing, like there's room for us to challenge each other. There's room for us to bring in ideas and things that even if we're not the expert around, to at least make space for those. And I feel like collectively do the work to figure it out.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, and well said. Monica, did you have anything you wanted to add about joy?
So what brings me joy right now is baking, and
Okay,
also
period.
making visiting like Black trans people in their home cities. So like going to see my sister Loris and also seeing my sister Bree and their cities, right? And so taking that time out of whatever's going on just to say like, oh, let me fly in to see you and hang out with you and everything else. And so that's really what's bringing me joy, like connected with like my trans sisters and like making sure doing self-care with them and everything else. And so it's really bringing me joy right now that I have the ability and the economics to go out and just fly out and visit a trans sister in their home city.
Very true. Very true.
Okay, Monica, bring me some cake, sis. Because you know, if Monica
Okay.
made it, it's gonna be good.
Ooh, you be baking? You be cooking it up?
Monica bakes, fries, shake and bake, all the things.
All the things. Okay.
I don't know where this name, the money, comes from. Monica the Money. So I kind of like that.
Money Monica.
Yes. We gotta get this money for these Black trans women. We gotta house Black trans women. Give us the money. Let me run up on you.
Okay, so when we shift the conversation and we talk about liberation, what does people idea around liberation or Black trans liberation look like?
And in a moment of like transparency, BTF exists because people told me no, and things were never gonna happen. And that I didn't deserve, or that, you know, the people that I cared about didn't deserve. And so, you know, the world, the universe has a funny way of making things happen. But when I started this fund, that was the thing that fueled me. I never wanted another Black trans person to have to fight as hard as I and other leaders have fought to like make things happen for community, right? And I think also when I think about the moments where I felt most liberated, it was in the direct presence or in proximity to Black trans folks, right? And so for me, I think that is a thing that, you know, when it gets hard, when you don't get the grant, when people say they don't get it,
Right.
when people are working like against you, right? It's being able to like still do all of the things that I want to do and be in some type of control, right? And when I say
Yeah.
some type of, I mean, we all have like control here at BTF, which also was something that was important to me because I didn't want to create another space where folks felt like they were closed out either. And so part of like being liberated means like bringing folks with us. And so I think BTF functions different than philanthropy because we're always thinking about and intentionally bringing folks with us, which takes a lot of time, resources, and accountability. And me and HC have this conversation all the time. We'll do something, and community is like, no. We're like, fuck, like, we gotta fix this. And I'm always like, I don't want to, like, this is our process. But at the end of the day, because we have to respond to community. And every time I'm like, I don't want to, once we get done, it actually reminds me of like why we do what we do and why we center, you know, folks in the way that we do.
Yeah. I definitely feel like liberation for me at the moment would currently look like one, if we're talking about Transgender Day of Remembrance, that people lives are not lost in like anti-transness. That is very important. I think the legal systems and like resources, I would want them to be relinquished in a way that people can have access to them without all of the shit that get them in trouble, right? Whether that's trying to hustle to make money, but ultimately you be criminalized for it. Or I definitely feel like the process of people getting documentations is something that could be way easier or simpler. So those type of things is something when I think about liberation, I would love to see. Anybody else have any thoughts about liberation?
And I think just even going off what you said, I mean, it sounds like at least partially means abolition and freedom from a police state that criminalizes Black trans people, especially, of course, Black trans women and femmes. I think it's also autonomy. So even just going to what Jay said about oftentimes having to be in spaces where you gotta be working with people that just don't understand all of
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the ability to not have to be serving other people's dreams, but actually being able to invest in our own.
I love that. Thank y'all for being. Y'all don't even know. Thank y'all for being here. I am so glad to hear all this. It just really feels this passion that I have of mine. And so, there is any work of any kind that can be done to liberate Black trans communities, what do y'all think that would look like?
Can I jump in for a quick sec about just jumping in on the piece
Yeah, of
around
course.
liberation? I'm a parent to 2 kids, and so part of my liberation also lies in like the folks that came before me and also the folks that are after me. And so a really big part of the way that I see us get to liberation is also like making sure that like that my young ones don't navigate the world with barriers that make no sense that pertain to them being free. And so that means that like they're 5. And so pronouns are a part of their world, right? Like that everyone that is in their community is everyone in their community. That Blackness looks like a lot of different things. Um, Instead of having to teach them later on about something or have to explain something when it's harder to undo. So like being very present, being very big now. And I think also for my elders, like my grandparents are like on their way to 90. And so as I'm present with them, that they also are in this moment too, where they can acknowledge me too, right? So there's a liberation in that. I also like my existence liberates them because there are things that I'm able to do that they were not even thinking about, right? And so like that I am existing in this moment right now, that I am somewhat cared for and loved on, and I have a family and trans and Black and expansive, right? That means that it is possible to just be I am, right? So that's to me the liberation piece. And I feel like that's what I hope to continue in our work. And then on this moment again, in our remembrance, and just thinking about like, again, these lives that exist that have been lost, that have been slain, that have been criminalized, right? That like some of that comes from the fact that we didn't allow them just to be here in this moment right now. And so again, like making space beforehand to just be able to be here
Yes.
right now.
Thank you. Come on, HD.
Yeah, so
Anybody else?
true. Yeah, I was thinking about just if I wanted to just wake up and just be, like that's not a thing that we're actually allowed to be able to do. And actually, working in philanthropy actually reminded me that like even just like things that we should just need to just sort of like, I have to work for food, I have to work for healthcare, I have to work for all of these things, right? And so I think one of the things that BTF shifts in the world is like how hard our folks have to work in order to get access to resources. So actually, when you said that, it really resonated with me. Like, yeah, if I just want to rest, like we just can't rest. Like, and a lot of times when we do, it's not real actual rest where we can just kind of like, we're always like, feel like I always see Black trans folks on vacation working, right? Or taking care of folks. And I feel like that's just like the nature of what we do. It is my hope that with resources, some capacity building and some real support, that, the next generation of leaders can actually teach Black trans communities how to rest. And we would have enough resources and support to be able to do that whenever we need to.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay. Um, is there anybody, um, regardless to if they passed on or if they're still here, that you would like to like uplift or send, just because I think it's really important, like I keep saying all the time, is to archive our history and also give people their roses while they're here. So if there's any people, groups of people, a person that you would like to highlight, is can you make space for them now and lift them up?
I'm like, there's so many, people to think about,
Okay.
you know. I'm thinking about my colleague, Lady Dame Figueroa Didi, of course, who is a priestess and just an she has like 13 books outside of the Black Trans Prayer book. She's published like 13 books. She's like award-winning playwright. She's gotten award-winning choreographer. She's the kind of artist that just makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, or like I need to be, I need to be sitting and writing more. So she's always a blessing to be able to continue this work in this life with. Um, I think about a lot of ancestor I think about often is this ancestor that's talked about in this book, Decolonizing Gender by Malcolm Shanks and Jay Kari, who are Black non-binary folks. And they talk about this ancestor, Victoria, from the 1500s, who was enslaved woman out of enslaved trans woman from Benin, who was consistently referred to by her other community members as a healer, as a medicine person. And so and she was very defiant of the ways in which her enslavers, who were Belgian, the clothes that they would try to get her to wear, the roles that they would give her. She already, she was someone who was very loved. And I think, again, creates a model of why Black transness is so central to ridding the world of white supremacy and colonization, that there's particular reasons why we were targeted. It's because of our power. It's because of our spiritual energy. It's because being Black and trans innately is a divine gift, all those different things. But yeah, those are the top two I'm thinking about right now, out of the hundreds that I know that we all gonna have.
I know. I didn't mean for anybody to be left out, but I just wanted to make space.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, also feeling the like, who do you say when there's so many people that come to mind? I think, yeah, I want to take space like one to folks who very recently transitioned, Mel Groves, and one of my sisters here, Renee, who we just lost this week. So yeah, just like, yeah, I hate that it's usually TDOR, like where we sit. I feel like, like we always have to experience it. I feel like TDOR is kind of where we're used to sitting in it. And yeah, I wish there was more ways for us to make space to like celebrate lives of folks. I think, even when like as we lose individuals, it still brings up all of the things, like all the pain, all the years, all the names that we do know. So it's really hard to really like be able to celebrate lives of people. If that, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, so I'm feeling that. And then also I want to shout out my sister Marianne, who's incarcerated and hopefully coming home next year, fingers crossed. So yeah, just thinking about, folks who I feel like for TDOR, we are mostly talking about folks who transitioned or folks who are remembering like their lives, but not usually like folks who I feel like it's really easy to forget are people who are kidnapped by the system and we're incarcerated because the one of the functions of policing, one of the functions of prisons is to erase people, is to make it easy to forget that people's lives and like actually exist in there. And so yeah, just really more recently having a lot of conversations with her, even about coming home. Like even the joy of coming home is usually like overridden by, but like how am I gonna eat? Like where am I gonna live? Like all the things. Right. So yeah, just like heavily sitting with that and like what does it look like for for a homecoming to not be like stressful for Black trans people. And for us to be able to like define home, I think in a lot of different ways. So yeah, that's what's coming up for me.
Thank you. I like the uplift, like, oh, it's so many people, but recently we've been doing this intervention called Kicking It with the Girls to help trans women of color here in Detroit from trauma. And so we actually at the end of our intervention, and so all those girls who came week after week to seek some type of healing and help to kind of deal with their trauma. I'm not gonna say get over it because some traumatic experience never leave you, but just the dedication that I feel like I saw, the sisterhood that I saw, the way in which they showed up and cared for each other. Um, that is what I want. And like, um, Bree, of course, you know you've been my mentor for a very long time. I love everything that you do, and I just think about all the moments in which, when I needed some saving grace, when I needed some love, you were there to uplift me and remind me of my own like power. And so, yeah, thank you.
Girl, I was loving on you, girl, because I didn't have no love in my life. So, girl, I'm glad that you got that love.
I'm
'Cause, you know,
glad
I
you
was
loved
hoping
on me.
somebody got it. No, Monica, I was gonna say, Monica, I think you would agree, but you know, Sharmis Outlaw has been on my heart a lot lately.
Yeah.
Um, she's a Black trans woman, and I moved to DC for a fellowship and landed, didn't have anywhere to stay, and like she just made sure like I was good. Um, and so that's always just kind of stuck with me that like she didn't hesitate, she made it happen. Um, and yeah, if it wasn't for that opportunity, I would have never met my husband, another Black trans person, Black trans man. And so, yeah, wanting to honor those two. But yeah, Monica, I know that
Yeah.
you were really close with Sharmis too.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss that girl. I just like, man, you every conference I would see Sharma, she would scream my name out, and I'd be like, okay, Sharma, here I come. And just like, and I just want to make sure that the Outlaw Project reflects her spirit. And that's what I'm like always trying, does this respect Sharma's, reflects Sharma's spirit and her character. So thank you, Brie.
Okay. Well, thank y'all. Can y'all let us know maybe what things y'all have at BTF that might be coming up, um, or personal endeavors that y'all may have going on?
Yeah, I would love to hear what's going on with other folks, and then I can follow up with BTF.
Okay, well, the Outwa Project is working on our tiny homes. Right now we're doing, cleared out the space, and now we're getting ready to do plumbing so we can build at least two, have two, and we're naming them after like amazing trans women. So the first house is going to be after Sharma's Outlaw. The second one's going to be after um, Marsha P. Johnson. Then we're going to have two more, and Sierra Rivera, and then hopefully Miss Major. And then, so I'm really excited about that. And so we're just super excited about getting this project going. And it was just like a dream. And all of a sudden, like one person said, we got some property here, you want to buy it? I said yes. And all of a sudden now we're like building tiny homes. So I really do appreciate the support from the Black Trans Fund and just for people all across. So thank you guys.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they would like to share?
Yeah, over at the Black Trans Prayer Book, what we're doing is, initially we had a book, which is a text, which is available everywhere, but we're taking that text and developing it into a documentary. So our COVID time has been filming and producing from a distance, which has been its own sort of particular joy. But that film will hopefully be out in the next year and a half.
Thank you. Well, I'll Miss Mouthy, the holidays is coming up, and I wanted to do my first like event called Meals with Mouthy, where I'd be able to feed trans people here in Detroit. Just let them know, because sometimes the holidays can get really tricky and hard, especially on like the emotional state and your mental health. So I just want people to know that like there's a place that they can come, um, and just enjoy and be in joy and liberation with other Black trans trans people, right? So hopefully in November, everything will happen the way that it will, and we'll be having ourselves a good time. Okay, Bree. If nobody else has anything they want to share,
You know, I love a good long pause. It makes people uncomfortable. If you ever want to find out
Ooh.
something about somebody, just stop talking. They're gonna tell you everything. No, I'm joking. Well, no, I'm serious, but also joking. Jay too, also curious as to like what you got going on. So would love to circle back. But for Black Trans Fund, we are on our way to move $600,000 this year to Black trans communities. And so next year, moving more money. Couple of things that I'm excited about. You know, we've just really been thinking about programming that we can implement to make sure that like all Black trans-led organizations like have access to resources. So, you know, next year, building out this grant-making pipeline that will be able to support, you know, newer, nascent groups, all the way to our like strongest, most posed groups. And just figuring out like ways in which that we can help folks build power and move resources to Black trans communities. I'm also really excited about some gender justice work that we are going to be doing as an advisory committee and as a community next year. You know, I've really just been thinking about when I started Black Trans Fund, I really wanted this to be a place for all Black trans folks. I think we've done an amazing job to make sure that like trans masculine communities are really seen throughout our fund and the work that we're supporting, but also like wanting to expand that. And so, you know, excited to do some really in-depth gender justice work that will help inform like how we show up for Black trans communities. Yeah, and then also, we've been doing some capacity building with some of our organizations. We've had a capacity building pilot where, you know, we are providing technical assistance to groups. And so, you know, really excited about doing some work next year to just figure out like, what is our organizing plan for communities? We're very clear about what we want to accomplish as Black Trans Fund, but it's also, we're also in a space to where now, you know, really just leaning into community for more input and guidance as we continue to build out this fund, because eventually we want to spin off and become our own 501c3 ran entirely by Black trans folks, right? And so we were really curious as to like, not only how do we do that, but how do we do that right? So yeah, excited about that. But yeah, wondering if anyone else has like things that are coming up that they'd like to share. HG, do you have any things that are coming up you'd like to share?
I'm always trying to figure out whether I can share it or not. But I want to say that I'm excited about sharing with everyone who our grantees are going to be this year. So we'll be able to sort of like big folks up, shout them out. I'm looking forward also to the ways that we try to figure out ways to connect them better too in the new year. So that's something that I'm looking forward to as well. Low key on my own outside of this work, I'm also trying to figure out better ways for Black trans folks to be able to be seen and heard around how they navigate RJ stuff and how they deal with family stuff as well. I moonlight as a birth worker too, so therefore like my work centers folks expanding families and transitioning through whatever it might mean to be someone who is like navigating possible loss. So like for me, it's also like figuring out the ways to connect folks around some of these issues. That's a personal thing that I'm also looking forward to in the new year.
Thank you.
HG also reminded me of something that we can't share. We will be sharing our grantees that we are funding this year soon. But one thing I think I can share with her, because I was like, I'm the boss, so I can share whatever I want to share. Yes, but Also not a boss because I don't like being a boss. I'm the lead. But no, you know, I'm really excited. Some folks may know this. I don't think others do. But we're investing in our advisors next year. So, you know, BTF is where, you know, we make it rain. So we're gonna make it rain on the advisors and they're gonna get some capacity building. And wait, I'm sorry, some professional development dollars and some personal development dollars. So yeah, so we're gonna invest in folks to make sure our folks are skilled up because we recognize that our advisors are doing amazing things outside of Black Trans Fund and we want to invest in them. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to do that next year.
Wonderful. That makes my heart full. Okay, Jay, did
Oh,
you
and
have
Miss Mouthy,
anything?
you're gonna be there too. So shout out to next year.
Okay, shout outs to the up and coming. No. But no, Jay, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I'm always bad at the personal plugs.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, what's going on? My consulting work, Soft Boy Consulting. I'm working on expanding, so doing leadership development and trainings, mostly for Black trans folks, but in general, for organizations and groups that are trying to move work or to build leadership amongst folks that are already in their membership or their staffs. And so I've been doing that since like 2018, I want to say. And so yeah, getting finally about to get a website launched and yeah, contracts have been expanding. So I'm really excited about that. And hopefully as those things come up, I'll be able to share with y'all. And yeah, definitely now hearing them, I'm like, okay, so I'm hyped about the professional and personal development funds. Yeah, to help me to help me with some of this business side of things that I'm going with. And I'm working on starting a do-rag line. So y'all should be seeing that soon. You know, not even for it's more of a fashion thing than a use thing. Come on, money bags. So even for folks who don't have the hair for it, still for the looks, I'm personalizing them, putting people's names and hoods and shit on them. So yeah, so y'all hopefully will see that soon too. Yeah, that's what I'm up to over here.
Okay, so how I normally like to close out every episode is to leave a mouthy message. And so, in honor of that, I would love if y'all bless the audience with pearls, right? So, one thing that they could either take away from what it's like to be in a place of mourning because of Transgender Day of Remembrance, or a pearl of wisdom for Black joy and liberation.
HD, and I feel like if I'm sharing a message, I want to share the message that if you are here in this moment right now on the live and are able to be thinking about someone who is lost, that if you can reposition that thinking in a way that you are also still here to continue to be here for them, that their memory continues to be with you, that their existence continues to be with you, and that you are here strong and brilliant and beautiful, and partially probably because of when they were here with you, so that you are continuing that story that they might have left behind.
Thank you.
I would just say that I hope that in this world that is constantly anti-Black and trans antagonistic, that I hope that every Black trans person who's listening or watching this is able to gravitate towards places where they feel honored, and move away from places that consistently show them disrespect.
Thank you. So one thing, I always talk about your ownness, right? The ability to be your ownness. And I think one thing that's really imperative, that even when we talk about loss throughout this process of life, that being being a trans person for me now has been the most liberating thing that I could have done for myself. So I think that in any moment that when we think about people who we lost, if they were able to live in their authentic truth, um, let's think about the moment of being liberated and not lost.
I think for me as a trans person, I'm reminded that we're constantly at loss, and shifting and grieving. And so sending folks love and care in that process. But Monica keeps me uplifted and we keep all the time. And there's one thing that she said to me that I will never forget. And that makes me feel like the baddest bitch of all. And I just wanted to share
Okay,
it.
period.
Okay. Monica said to me a couple of weeks ago, she said, BTF reminds me every day that Black trans people can do anything that they put their mind to. And so really wanting to encourage folks, Black trans folks, to dream and dream big and know that you could do anything that you put your mind to.
Yeah. Whew, yeah. And I just want to let people know, it's even though we like mourn, but there's always a day for celebration, right? It's those little memories that you take with you, like that recipe that your friend taught you how to make. It when you make it, it's that memory, or that special drink she gave you, and you like, "Ooh, girl! Every time I drink this drink, it's gonna remind me of you." And so, just take those moments and live with those moments, and take those moments and build upon those moments, because those moments can be moments for other trans women and trans people who are living right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything's possible, sis. I see your shirt.
Okay, period.
Okay. Jay,
Um,
also wanting to affirm you too. Thank you for
yeah.
showing up and being with us. And congratulations on the do-rag line, because once some do-rags hit, we're gonna need a couple 2-3 BTF ones, special order. So we'll definitely chat. But
I got y'all.
congratulations.
I got y'all for sure. Man, appreciate y'all, man.
Okay, so again, this is your girl, Miss Mouthy. I'm so thankful for you tuning in. Again, I love this conversation. I love that we were able to uplift people. I love that we were able to talk and center joy and liberation and talk about the amazing work that's going on here and continue to live in the moment, in the present of now, even throughout turmoil and loss and sorrow. Black people have always shown, especially Black trans people, have shown that I hate the word, but we are resilient and we are um, continuously evolving and pushing past barriers to prove and show that, like, one, our lives matter, and hell, you ain't gonna stop us. So, with that being said, it's your girl, Miss Mouthy. Even when you don't what see me, you hear me. Until next time, bye.